Sinking Roots, Rising Action: A Study of Biodiversity Decline in Louisiana's Southern Coastal Zones. Biodiversity loss can occur through several factors. This includes pollution, climate change, habitat loss, invasive species, and exploitation of resources. This leads to instability within an ecosystem, which can have profound consequences. It can lead to a loss of food security and quality, as well as the complete loss of species that we rely on economically. This will lead to the eventual loss of jobs that rely on fisheries and the collapse of coastal communities. Efforts to change course have been made to varying degrees of success, but cooperation is needed to see real change. Policy changes have been passed at the international level down to the local level to assist in sustainable resource management and conservation efforts. Biodiverse ecosystems are more resilient to climate change, as the variety of species present means that there will be a variety of adaptations to different conditions. Ecosystems that are less diverse struggle to adapt, so when there is a sudden change of the temperature or salinity, the few resilient species could be left with no prey. Legislative change is necessary to make the kind of change we need to sustain the efforts. But changes made at home in this community and beyond are equally important. The mangroves of Louisiana are under assault from both climate change and habitat loss. Many species of birds, fish, mammals, crustaceans, invertebrates, and rely on mangroves to live and reproduce. This means that any change in biodiversity will have a heavy impact. Fish species like the red and black drum have been heavily impacted as the change in temperature has affected their main source of food, crabs and shrimp. Crab and shrimp are ectothermic, so the changes to the water temperature force them to leave. These temperature changes also affect the resident fish species' ability to breed, forcing bird species like herons and egrets to abandon their nesting sites. The loss of all these predators will have allowed other species to flourish for a time, but the impact of this change in the food chain cannot be fully known, as there is a ripple effect that goes all the way through the food chain. I chose aquaculture as a career to connect the rest of my life to my dad as we spent more time on the water fishing over the years. I love the southern coast of Louisiana, as I am who I am today as a result of the memories that I made there. There is an existential nature to the consequences of biodiversity loss, but I cannot imagine a world where these experiences cannot be had by others. I am on the journey to be a part of the solution. Farming shrimp and recirculating systems in a warehouse. While farmed seafood has an uphill battle in relation to public acceptance in some cases, much of this reputation is due to the damage done in public waters that has led to the extermination of some native species. I hope to take some of the burden off of the wild resources so they can have a better chance of success. The impact to biodiversity and its consequences do not motivate the legislators as much as we would hope, even though we know that the increase in precipitation and storm surges will lead to serious amounts of erosion that mangroves protected us from. This can not only lead to the loss of property, but the loss of millions of dollars. Fisheries will feel the impact of the drop in target species abundance, leading to the loss of money and jobs, negatively impacting the economy. The mangroves work to sequester CO2 from the atmosphere, giving us a fighting chance against global warming and climate change. Losing them will only accelerate the warming of the planet. In the end, many people will be uprooted to adjust to this new reality and loss of infrastructure. Entire communities that rely on the coast will have to find new lives. I believe that aquaculture will give opportunities to those displaced by the loss of a wild availability, but I hope it never gets there. If we work together, we can give our planet a fighting chance. There are steps that my target audience, the public, can take if they want to get involved. Like most change, it starts at home. Limiting the use of aerosols and single-use plastics is a great start. Something as small as sharing a ride when it's possible, or picking up that piece of trash is doing something, while so many are doing nothing. No action is too small when it is aligned to do something good for our planet and its inhabitants. Second, they can contact local, state, and national legislators to demand more change and cooperation with those trying to solve this problem. They have a bad habit of kicking the problem down the road for the next person, but together we can let them know that this is not an option, as we're out of time. Everyone doing something is better than a few doing everything, as they can't do it alone. In my social ecological framework model, I look to show how exposed Louisiana's mangroves are right now. While losing the mangroves would lead to an ecological impact, the loss of biodiversity, food scarcity, economic impact, job loss, and a hard social impact. They all impact each other and the mangroves themselves. Food scarcity would lead to more habitat destruction as we look to offset the loss of the mangroves' resources. An economic hit would also force the state to invest in other revenue streams, leading to a loss of funding that is needed to give the mangroves a shot at making it. The case study titled Wetland Restoration Using Mangroves in Southern Louisiana looked to figure out how effective planting mangroves can be when it comes to carbon sequestration and restoration of this coastal habitat. We see how black mangroves work with their expansive root systems that effectively create ideal conditions for other vegetation, as well as hold the coastal floor together, which aids in preventing coastal erosion. We look at how the mangroves planting pilot project looked to determine how effectively they could plant these mangroves in the interior portions of the coastal wetlands to prevent erosion. They emphasize that the mangroves are our last line of defense against weather events like hurricanes and surges, provides a natural habitat and nurseries for many species of all types, and provides the valuable service of carbon sequestration. The case study titled Mapping the Extent of Mangrove Ecosystem Degradation by Integrating an Ecological Conceptual Model with Satellite Data. They freely use available Earth observation tools like Google Earth to develop a quantitative classification model of mangrove ecosystem loss. They use this data to determine the suitable remote sensing variables to support the model and bridge the gap with data collected from publicly available satellite sites. They applied this model to the mangroves of Rakhine State, Myanmar, and Shark River in the Everglades National Park. They found evidence that 40% of the mangroves in Rakhine show evidence of degradation. The part that stood out to me the most is the crippling effect that a single hurricane can have on the Everglades, as the extent of degradation went from 5.1% to 97.4% after Hurricane Irma, which was a Category 4 hurricane. This is applicable to my course project, as this model and others like it are informing Louisiana to the extent of our own mangrove destruction and what the future could hold. We hope that this could help us in the future and let us know what we need to do today. Did they make a difference? I find it hard to say that they didn't accomplish their goals either way, as we know more now than we did beforehand. Understanding the course of mangroves in other countries both informs us of the consequences and lets us know what works, and just as importantly, what doesn't work. The mangroves planting pilot project is a success, as they have planted enough mangroves that more corporations are getting involved in this project that is still going to this day. My proposed management practices are to implement what the mangroves planting pilot project did in Louisiana. I believe that we should make use of multiple varieties of mangroves so we can protect the coast and preserve the wetlands at the same time, as some are known for growing on banks while others do best in still or even flowing water. So habitat restoration is the best path forward in my opinion. We must keep up with what we lost while looking to preserve the future for this region. My SWAG campaign will be focused on grade school age kids. Tomorrow's adults will have to continue and improve on the efforts of the previous generation. We know that the lessons we learn young stick with us the most, and Mangrove Maverick looks to have a similar impact on today's youth to what Captain Planet had on my generation. We all remember Smokey Bear or McGruff the Crime Dog because they were perfect vehicles for the message and the age group. I would start on TV and move into classroom visits by a full-size Maverick explaining how their actions now affect their ability to enjoy their favorite foods and animals tomorrow, as well as how they can change the world themselves by getting involved. The idea is to hopefully inspire some of these kids to pursue careers in marine biology, alternative plastics, or climate science. A t-shirt campaign would be a great way to spread the word. While just the animated image of our hero will do little but catch the eye of passerby, a QR code will be displayed on the back that directs the individual to a website explaining how the loss of mangroves impacts biodiversity. So here I am believing in the curiosity of others. When it comes to defining my contributions currently, I do not feel good about them. Where I do the most damage is in pollution. I don't litter and I recycle, but I drive a lot. I drive up to 400 miles a week, not counting the driving I do between work. I'm not just contributing CO2, I'm also adding carbon monoxide, particulate matter, hydrocarbons, nitrogen oxides, and brake dust. While brake dust does not play as big of a role in climate change as much as it does air quality and human health, I have to recognize a negative contribution. As for my career, printing isn't the best, as I come into frequent contact with ozone, and some of the inks and varnishes are toxic. With this education, I hope to spend the rest of my life working in aquaculture, and I want to leave whatever avenue I choose better than when I found it. I want to produce healthy product in the most sustainable way possible, even if it means less money on the back end. Food production has a funny way of becoming toxic if you let it. I want more land-based seafood production to take some of the burden off of the ocean and give it every chance to recover. If the mangroves are lost, aquaculture becomes more important than ever. If we want to keep up with demand, so basically, I'm doing nothing good, but I'm working on it.